Rejoice and rise. God of all wearies, God of our side.
The Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, formerly known as the Black Elected Democrats of Ohio, was founded in 1967 by African American state legislators under the leadership of State Representative C.J. McClin of Dayton, Ohio.
C.J. was sort of a black leader. He was smart, interesting, gentleman all the way around.
The Ohio Legislative Black Caucus has a rich history in the state of Ohio, making sure and ensuring that we are protecting the neediest of our citizens. The advocacy role that we have played and shall continue to play in Ohio has been absolutely significant in the areas of education, health care, equal pay, housing. We continue to excel in making sure that we are taking care of our citizens.
The organization was created during the Civil Rights era that featured organized resistance across the United States to racial segregation and discrimination with strategies such as nonviolent resistance, legal court challenges, marches, protests, boycotts, freedom rides, and rallies. 80 years after the first meeting of the Ohio legislature in 1799, George Washington Williams from Cincinnati was elected to serve in the Ohio House of Representatives. He became the first African American elected to serve in the Ohio General Assembly. His historic election in 1879 helped pave the way for 87 other African Americans who have served in the Ohio General Assembly to the present day.
George Washington Williams, who came into the legislature in 1879, took his seat in 1880 at the age of 30. And then so many others that we see represented in this room, from John Green to Benjamin Arnett, and so many who made tremendous contributions to the development of progressive public policy in the state of Ohio. That's the kind of legacy that the Black Elected Democrats of Ohio and now the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus continues to advance here in the General Assembly.
Other African American legislators who have achieved historic milestones during their service include William L. Mallory Sr. from Cincinnati, who became the first African American House Majority Floor Leader. He retired in 1994, holding the record of being the longest-serving Majority Leader in Ohio's history.
It was started originally so that we, as a voting bloc, the Black, at that time it was called the Black Elected Democrats of Ohio, could impact the legislation that was being passed in Ohio, so we could support our African American constituents and oppose legislation that was detrimental to us.
The early work of the caucus also helped to open the doors for African American women to play a greater role in the legislative and political process. In 1978, Helen L. Rankin from Cincinnati became the first African American female member of the Ohio General Assembly. She was appointed to fill the seat of her late husband, James W. Rankin. Her appointment and election in 1978 served as a great source of inspiration for the 17 other African American female legislators who have also served in the Ohio General Assembly over the last 29 years.
Okay, being the first African-American woman in the legislature was an interesting feat. And I was the first for 8 years. It was 8 years before the second command. And I found myself in three minorities. One was being an African-American, number one. Number two was being an African-American woman. And number three was being in that whole African-American group. So that was kind of interesting.
Since its creation in 1967, members of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus have worked to achieve the vision and goals of its founding members by playing an instrumental role in national, statewide, and local elections, and in the passage of significant legislation and public policy.
And when I first came to the General Assembly, 584 just passed. And so I was there during some of the early stages of the implementation of 584 as we were trying to get minority businesses to do business with the state of Ohio. So to have the minority set aside that dealt with goods and services and contractors was very important to many of our constituent groups.
And with the leadership of Ray Miller, today there are 42 state offices of minority health, concerted efforts throughout the United States aimed at improving the health and the well-being of people of color. We've gone from no infrastructure to maintain issues of health disparities to a strong, powerful infrastructure established throughout this nation. But it wouldn't have happened without vision, and it wouldn't have happened without courage. We are so grateful, and the community in Ohio is so grateful to the work being done by the Legislative Black Caucus.
I think one of our crowning moments was when we walked out of the Ohio legislature over a matter dealing with the funding of Central State University, which happens to be my alma mater. There were two Cleveland legislators who were trying to get our funding cut. Central State University got a special subsidy that was very necessary in order for them to have a viable university. And the black members walked out off the floor and went to the third floor and wouldn't come down. And I was sent up to bring them back down to the floor. And I went upstairs, but I joined them instead of coming back. I was a majority leader, and when I came back down and some of the white legislators were saying, "Oh, you're the majority leader." I said, "I might be the majority leader, but I'm black first."
OLBC played a significant role because Central State University's predecessor, it was founded on the work of two members, African American members of the Ohio General Assembly. They were involved in some significant activities during that time. The first thing they did was they got the Ohio General Assembly to get rid of the black codes or the black laws that limited rights of African Americans in the state of Ohio to education and other opportunities. So we were chartered in 1887, and we started educating young men and women back in 1887 because of the efforts of two members of the General Assembly who were African American.
To further build on the rich legacy of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus Foundation was established by the caucus in 2000 as a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 organization to build on the rich legacy of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus.
We started the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus Foundation to help us identify resources independent of our offices in this House and the Senate, independent of our campaign resources, so that we could more adequately address the needs of the citizens in this state.
Representative Vernon Sykes worked very diligently to establish the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus Foundation. Under his leadership, it was a beginning, but as I became president, I was able to concretize that vision. My hope at that time was to involve the corporate community in a black experience that legislators, in fact, could share with them. What did it mean when we looked at predatory lending? What did it mean when the utility rates went up so high for our constituencies? So I was hoping that there would be an education between the black legislators and the corporate community.
Alone, maybe the corporations wouldn't have as much of an impact, but when you combine all our dollars and have some support from the Legislative Black Caucus to figure out where those dollars are best used, we can have a better impact than we might otherwise.
We're making a difference in the state of Ohio. When I think about our growth, I think about now having a corporate roundtable, and I am so proud to be chair of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus Foundation as well. And we have major corporations who have joined this foundation to help us get our message across the diverse population of the 11 million people in the state of Ohio.
As we look back to 1878 and the experience of the Honorable George Washington Williams in leading African Americans forward towards the 20th century and for full equality. In this exciting time in which we live and work, the whole issue of social, political, and economic equality for African Americans in Ohio still rests at the top of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus agenda.